Who done stepped in the game? At point blank range. Who done stepped in the game? Stepped in the game. Stepped in the game.
don't get more, just ignore. I don't want to hear how long will it be before.
Who don't step in the game? Yeah, that intro never gets old, so I'll continue to use it, especially if I start these solos. So, welcome to ShadowCast 58. So, this was supposed to be a wraparound episode from about 2 weeks ago. So, I have 2 weeks worth of information that I'm going to put out here. Anything that happened in the last couple of days, I mean, fuck it. I ain't follow it, so I'm not going to talk about it. I don't need to talk about what games I've been playing. Y'all know what game I've been playing. If you follow me on any of the systems, so yeah, Breath of the Wild, pretty much for the most part, and Street Fighter 6. I think I said Street Fighter 5 last podcast I was on. Y'all go on the Winging It podcast, and you'll see me talk about it there. Make sure you guys like, follow, and subscribe to all my affiliated accounts there. So that'll be Sandstorm. He's actually in the chat right now. What's going on? Trey Vito's in chat right now. Make sure you subscribe to Jay Fleming, the Winging It podcast host, and also Mr. GBGINU, Andre, the Nostradamus of gaming, and Action Jack. Make sure you follow those guys on social media, Twitter or Facebook or whatever they have, and YouTube also here. Subscribe to them. So over the past few weeks, I was pondering whether or not I was going to leave Twitter. I refuse to call it whatever the new name is. But I was pondering whether or not I was going to leave it. And I don't mean leave it to go to whatever Facebook created, because who cares? I mean just leave it all together. As far as focus, and I had promised you guys that this channel would be more regular, and Twitter is nothing but distractions for the most part anyway, and people being full of shit. So if I'm going to use it, it should just be for promoting this channel for the most part. Shouts out to everybody coming in. Serial, Sandstorm, Trey Vito again. Joe Bo is in here. Cool Breeze and Sarton. Okay, appreciate y'all for coming back around. I know I'm not as frequent as I should be to keep retention, as the YouTube algorithm and YouTube rules, they tend to recommend that's what you do. But if I still have the same amount of subscribers I do after never following any of that shit, obviously I'm doing something right, and people want to hear what I have to say some of the time. So I try to speak up when needed and not all the time. Some people do a podcast every week even though they ain't got nothing to fucking talk about. So yeah, this is a ShadowCast. I kind of warn you guys. So even if you were following the Winglet podcast, it's a little bit more tame with regards to the cursing and stuff. But here, I just don't care for the most part. So yeah, if it's not going to be monetized anyway, so who gives a shit? So what I wanted to talk about, for the most part, is there appears to be a lot of it just, for whatever reason, like Nintendo just stays a target, and I don't know what the deal is here, but people just want to talk about it all the time. You got people that swear the console was dead, and Steam Deck and all these other devices come out copying it, and people buy them. They don't have fun with them, and then they go back to their Switch. They just don't tell you, which is just ironic to me, because it proves exactly why the system was created. It had nothing to do with, hey, it's a handheld now, we do blah, 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 blah. It was about Nintendo focusing all their gaming talent to one device. And those custom games for that custom system is the selling price for that device. That's what people go to it for. And you could tell, because these other devices come out, regardless of what name's behind it, they're not going to come close to what Nintendo has going on, because Nintendo has the games. And not just the games, as in, i.e., open up the PC library and now it's 10 times more than any other console manufacturer in history. It's games designed specifically for that system. Even if they're ported to that system, they're designed specifically for that system. And that's something that you don't get on most other any PC platform for that matter. And a lot of these newer console games also, they kind of feel like also ran like they weren't designed for that console. It kind of felt like the lead platform was PC and they kind of shoehorned it there versus having some type of, you could tell there's some type of effort um, with regards to putting games on Nintendo Switch, whether it's Nintendo themselves or their third party partners or the wonderful indie recruiting that they've been doing since the Wii U days, since third parties wanted to try to fail them, only for them to come back begging this generation, the ninth generation, that is, because people tend to think that the ninth generation didn't start in 2017. So I've got a couple things I'm going to run through here, and I'll kind of talk about. So apparently, John Lemon got to run his mouth on a Digital Foundries podcast, talking about that he heard that Switch cart capabilities will be massively increased. I just don't know. Like, I think Nintendo Prime will talk about this on one of his videos or something to that effect, and we had a discussion about it. I have to get him on the show at some point. Our schedules conflict, so it's kind of hard. I do want to get him on here. So if you guys, I guess, bug and beg him to say, "Hey, bring him on the show," I'll bring him on the show. Or he'll have me on his show again, or what have you. Like, we can collab, because nobody takes this shit seriously, right? So it's not, we're not beefing. We did like a quote unquote debate conversation, whatever, many years ago on Player Essence podcast. Shout out Player Essence. But he had a discussion about that on one of the videos he was talking about. And so what it sounds like is that John Lemon is of the know, that he knows or spoke to somebody. And generally speaking, none of these guys' uncles work at Nintendo. So chances are, even if he heard anything and it's true or it's close to being true, it's because he heard it from somebody that is a third-party partner usually, and they let it slip because nobody in Nintendo is going to let any of this slip. It's their, it's their wheelhouse, and it's their it's their privacy. So they try to keep all those trade secrets in house. So essentially, what's supposed to be happening is the cartridges are going to be larger, right? And people are kind of saying that needs to happen because of certain games and whatnot, and file size requirements and all that. And my whole point is with that, unless you plan on playing 4K on the go, there really should be no change with regards to file size for a lot of these games. Perhaps if you play docked or whatever, and then you're able to upscale or play natively higher than 1080p, then I could see why the increased file size is needed. The majority of these games, especially third-party games coming out today, are insanely bloated. Like, you don't need that large file size like a lot of these games have. And if you look at any of the ports that were done on Nintendo Switch coming from those old platforms, we're talking about like PS3 games being, 20, 30 gigs, which is just insane. And all of a sudden you port that game to Switch and it's like 8 gigs, and it's no problem, because obviously at this point we've understood that a lot of that stuff was bloat, and some of those things are used for caching data and things of that nature, because the system was just insanely slow. So they had to cache data to speed up the way the game worked. So are going to put SSD drives are much cheaper. So it's that Prime is live right now. Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, not to compete with him, but I guess I think I saw somebody else's podcast is live right now too. I think the Live and Level podcast is on right now as well. I don't know why I picked the wrong night, but a lot of the times when I do it on Wednesday night, other people are streaming. I'm whatever. I don't want to take away from them, but apparently the storage is supposed to be greater, and whether it's going to be an SSD or not, kind of really doesn't matter, because if Nintendo's going to do cartridges, they're going to keep the same partner, and it's going to be Macronix, right? And what I try to stress to Nintendo Prime and other people because it's not just him. There's a whole bunch of other people that think magically when you see an increase in NAND technology for SSDs, that magically means that Nintendo could just use that because it's the standard or what have you. Nintendo is focused on two things: security and durability. That means longevity of the game. Like if Nintendo went with, hey, we need the largest capacity possible back in 2017, then you end up seeing another fan. What's going on, Shiny, in the chat? But if you if in 2017 they decided to use NAND flash memory on their cartridge and not partial mask ROM like extra ROM is on there, you end up in a situation where you put a Switch cart in your system and the game's dead and it doesn't load anymore, because that stuff doesn't last long. And it doesn't survive that many reads or writes. So the goal is to develop something that lasts long enough so that mass ROM or extra ROM then at that point is somewhat rated close to 25 to 30 years worth of shelf life. So in a lifetime or half of one, you can have a game console and game cartridges that you can pull off a shelf no matter how many years in the future, and you'll still be able to play that game. That was the goal. Now, if we just chase tech and whatever the latest tech is, you have to look at all the things that it's supposed to do in that environment as far as fulfilling whatever they design for the customer to get at that point. And I think that's the part that a lot of people are missing. It's not just, hey, let's chase the fastest speed or chase the largest capacity. It's the fastest, the largest, and the cheapest, and the most durable per pin, per bit that you can buy in bulk. That's the other thing. So you can say, hey, well, look, these SSD prices are going down, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, you walking into Best Buy and buying an SSD for cheap from whoever, say you buy a Sarbent SSD, M.2 SSD or whatever for cheap. How much are those modules for an individual chip at 1,000 costs? How much does that cost to a console manufacturer, or say somebody wants to make slot machines for Vegas or wherever around the world? How much does that cost per 1,000, per 100,000, per million? This is the type of avenue that you have to go about. That's the approach you need to make whenever you're going to be purchasing anything like this, or whenever you need to think about how somebody's going to purchase or make anything available to you. So I just really want people to understand that point. And it was just kind of weird that all this discussion about Switch 2 has been happening by the very people that were just talking about Switch Pro not too long ago, and they were hammering it down until we knew that pretty much it was bullshit from the beginning, and then we come with the excuse, well, it was in the works. It was so maybe not. I'm more of the thought that maybe not. The closest thing we got to an internal rumor that was true was the HD Wii, and that was only because both the HD version and the SD version were two prototypes that they were showing to developers internally. A Switch Pro being shown internally while they know they have a successor on the way doesn't make sense to me. That's a Sega move, and Nintendo has learned from Sega. They're not going to pull a Sega move and say, hey, we have 4 different types of hardware out right now, go. They've learned to make things simple, and that the handheld version of Switch that doesn't dock is still the same capacity, same SoC, the same OS as the other 3. So the other 3 models of it, the original, the die shrink, and then the OLED, they're all the same SoC, and the same OS, same Horizon OS on all of them. So there's no confusion, and every game that you run runs the same everywhere, or every game that you program works the same everywhere. They've learned that simplicity helps not only with them selling consoles and ensuring that games work, whatnot, the Nintendo seal of quality, that was kind of a running joke on Twitter not too long ago, but also to developers as well. Like, why do you already have to deal with two separate modes on the Switch itself? Why have to deal with two separate modes for each model of Switch coming out because they have different hardware in all of them? Why do that? Doesn't make sense. So, but yeah, shout out to all y'all here. We got Argonaut in here. Elvis Alaya, welcome to the chat. Cool Breeze, welcome. Dark Void's back. How you doing? J Biggs and Gwen, how y'all doing? But yeah, we're just getting right into it, just talking about this alleged console that a lot of these people talk about. So apparently Nate the Hate was talking about it. This guy from VGC, Andy Robinson, was talking about it too. I could put up the article. I just don't really feel like it right now because I just don't. Everybody knows what all this stuff is and how you can pull it up. So I just don't want to. I don't want to deal with it. There was. I'll tell you what the article was though. It's from T3.com. I could pull it up here, but no, I'll just read it. It says Switch 2 tipped for at least one massive spec boost. So you can follow along with me if you want to. And the two sources they list here, right? But they list them as if they're official, which is crazy to me. These are rumors, but you have these two people talking as if they're literally the people with firsthand knowledge of this system. So they say the Switch 2, on the other hand, will offer much more reasonable storage capacity, according to both podcaster Nate the Hate and VGC's Andy Robinson. And the other specs they were talking about, it will have a fairly significant amount of internal flash memory, which we're talking about before, and as well as the cartridge size. But there will be a downgrade of the handheld's display. Like, I don't know what you mean by downgrade if you're going from LCD to LCD. I guess what they mean is there was an OLED model, but nobody bought the OLED model. I don't mean to say nobody bought the OLED model. It's actually probably the best-selling model right now, but that's still far less than the 70-something million of the regular Switch and Switch Lite. So it's still got a ways to go to catch up. But you can't call that really a downgrade because the main model is still LCD. I guess since there's OLED out, maybe they'll sell an OLED of whatever the new console is. Who knows at this point? I mean, nobody thought that the Switch would end up getting an OLED model either, except them calling the OLED model the Switch Pro at that point, which is we're done with those rumors by now at this point. It says we'll likely have to wait until early 2024 at the very least before we find out, but let's just say that Christmas next year could be an interesting one. So what I want to say with this is you can look at the title. All in due time, man. Nobody knows any of this. Nobody knows. They talk and they suggest, they pontificate, and they pass rumor after rumor after rumor. And week after week, they're proven false, or we have to move in another direction and talk about something else, or we talk about this type of technology. We were talking about exo screens at one point, just all kind of foolishness back and forth. And we're talking about like big names out there pushing some of these rumors, even though they all came from the same guy, Mochizuki, but he's been off on rumors a lot. Apparently he was good on some, but somebody needs to name me one that he was actually accurate on. For the life of me, not for the life of me, but recently, I have not seen anything like that. Not in the last maybe 6 years that he was spot on. So, but let's see. Yeah, you say you remember the exo screens? Yeah, I remember that too. I remember the 64 gig carts were going to be available really, really soon, and that was in 2018. It took a long time for that one. And people were talking about the 64 gig version of the Switch, which ended up being in the OLED. But it's in the development kits right now. It was always there from the beginning. It was, and they also had 60 gigs of RAM as well, because you double pretty much everything for development. That's just the way that works. But yeah, I don't want people to think that any of this stuff needs to happen for this system. And it's just weird when we're hearing like Digital Foundry talking about stuff, and I'm like, how did you guys become what you are? I really know, but the question needs to be posed to other people. Like, how did Richard Ledbetter start? How did he start this company? Why does it seem like they're really, really close to Eurogamer? Go back to the beginning of that company and what Eurogamer was doing then at the time. And we need to see exactly what their role is in the industry and why they exist. As of now, the role that they're fulfilling is finding the gimmick. People in the masses, by default, are not technical, right? They don't know what frame rates are. They don't know what specular highlights are. They know none of this. And what kills me is I was just looking at a video not too long ago. John Lemon was just talking about all these features that were in this game. And I'm like, you have zero sources for this. You were just talking through the whole review. And I mean, and look, and he was talking about a Nintendo game at the time. He was bragging about Fast Racing Neo. And I'm like, you're reading this off like it's an ad almost, because the stuff that you're talking about, I'm like, so did the developer tell you this stuff was happening at the time? Or are you guessing this is what's happening while you're watching the video of it? Some of the terms, I'm just like, yeah, that's very specific. And you knowing that is what that is during that frame of animation, like, and some of that is kind of interesting to me. And also, you don't know what stage or what type of math they use to approximate some of the stuff that they did in the foreground or the background, but neither here nor there. It was just interesting what their purpose was early on, and they didn't really come into height until towards the end of the 7th generation, for the most part, where they started doing comparisons between all the systems and whatnot. I mean, that's kind of how they caught on. Everybody wanted to go look at them to see who had the best version, instead of listening to in-depth stuff talking about the technology itself. It was just a whole bunch of videos being regurgitated saying, hey, well, this version of the game runs at 30 frames per second, and this version of the game runs at 31. And that's, that kind of foolishness. But that's essentially why they exist. Because if you sat, I guess as Miyamoto said, in the 6th generation, that the law of diminishing returns, it's here. It's really, really tough for the average person to be able to tell what's happening if you show 2 games side by side and the only difference is frame rate, and we're talking 10 frames per second is the difference. Or if we're talking about resolution and we're talking about there's adaptive resolution, and this game goes all the way up to 1080p and the other one goes all the way up to 900p. Can you really tell? And can you really tell per frame when it starts dithering down or doubling pixels because it has to? These are the things that are worrisome to me. And then what really bothered me was at the time where they couldn't confirm whether they were actually doing frame rating or not, and how they were capturing frames. And it was capture based frames is how they were doing it. They're capturing the highest quality video feed and doing division to figure out how exactly what the frame rate is. They use the internal tool to do it. If you want to do it yourself, you can use Fraps, but that's CPU. That's CPU consistent, and it's typically capturing what's on your graphics card. So what you would use is another third-party tool like TR Drop or any of the other video tools that comes with high-end production equipment, and you can measure the frames per second of whatever video feed that you're playing at the time. It just essentially looks for changes in whatever pixels you define, and it says, hey, look, this is how many frames per second are going right now because I'm measuring time and I'm measuring frames, and this is the division. That's essentially what they wrote in-house for them to be able to come up with the stuff that they were doing so they could prove what they were doing was accurate. Kind of hilarious that they're counting steps to count pixels. That's probably something you could do with a grate inside of a photo editor, like Photoshop or anything like that. But that's what they chose to do. Okay, great, because they want to know what the internal resolution is. But it's just weird to me that when they in the video where they showed it, I probably show this a little bit later in another video. But in the video that they showed to discern how easy it is to count your own your own do your own pixel count and count the stairs so you know what the pixel count is, they use a direct capture from the console. And all truth be told, the consoles do a little bit of rasterization too after the fact. Once they do post processing on the image before it's converted into whatever it's converted to. It is a direct capture, but it's got to get converted into something, right? So it's gonna move stuff around until it's finalized. So the best way to get the true internal resolution of something is to take it from the video capture, freeze frame, look. So the issue with that is that, oh yeah, there'll be tearing, so there won't be any way to rip. That's the whole point. You want to count just a full frame. Wait until you get a full frame, count the pixels, go from there. That's what should be happening. But they decided to just tell regular people, well, you're just regular people, press the capture button on your Xbox One, that was just kind of strange to me. But they exist so you have something to actually brag about. So you have a reason to want to go out and spend $400 or $500 for a system because you get the more pixels on this one thing. So it's just, I'm just wondering what the space would look like without them around. Like, what if they stopped today? And it's really strange right now because right now it's really, really weird because we're in a situation where all of these engines are modular, so they can go anywhere. It can be on Steam Deck, it can be on Switch, it can be on mobile phones, it can be on a PS4, Xbox One, PS5, what have you. They can all be everywhere simultaneously now. So for you to know which version of what game you're going to want to get without them, it's going to depend on your brand loyalty, what you think your eyes see, and whatever extra features may be there. Maybe one version has a special character or something, and that will lead you to want that version more. But the whole point is you want some type of evidence to be able to tell you that your purchase was justified when you went off the specs of the console that these other platforms bragged about. And we all knew, or us in the know then at the time, all knew that when they were bragging about these specs, they weren't going to mimic reality. You would see these demos and these vertical slices that look really good, and then when you actually sat down and played Watch Dogs, you're just like, yeah, this is not what I saw at E3. It just isn't. So when you're in that situation and you're realizing, or if you're the layman and you're like, man, these games are looking just like the 6th generation games that just have more pixels. So they support HD, but I'm still getting invisible walls. It's still the same quests in GTA. Like, what am I getting here? There's still bugs in Bethesda games. Like, what are we getting for what we're paying for? And so they're here to sell you pixels and frame rate. So they'll tell you certain effects and whatnot that are happening. The average person doesn't know what that is. They don't know what the difference is. They don't know what it looks like. Texture size and all that other kind of stuff, you don't really know or see unless you get a ROM of the game, download it from the internet, and you look at the actual assets. You don't really know, like, because a game isn't really going to show you that quality in that way unless you go into a debugging mode or something to that effect. The only way to do that is to actually pull the assets from the game and look at them yourself, and then you can see what the texture size is. So it's just strange to me, and I've had discussions with people that they'll talk about, well, we need the frame rate because the frame rate determines whether there's input lag or not, and blah 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 blah. And I'm like, on what? And so I made a discussion where I talked about, hey, Ocarina of Time is a classic game. Frame rate dips in the teens regularly. but that game is still playable. Why? The way the game was programmed and the input latency match. So, in addition to that, what they don't account for is the display that you're using. Unless you modify your Nintendo 64, you're using composite or RF to connect to a CRT. And if you're using a CRT, there's a whole lot of display lag that's there that you have to account for. Well, if you're developing a console back then, you already knew that timing. Smart people already knew that timing, and while you're playing and you're moving your Nintendo 64 joystick around, you as a person do not detect that delay at all. So you're talking anywhere between 50 to 60 milliseconds in input lag that you don't feel, because there's another 30 or 40 on the display. So it kind of syncs up. Trying to explain that to people that only know those old games that I'm talking about now through emulation just don't understand the concept. They're, oh god, the emulator does this and therefore it does blah 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 blah. I'm like, that game wasn't designed to do that. You are brute forcing what the issue is, and you're creating a problem where there wasn't one to begin with. If you played the game on the original hardware the way that it was designed for the display that it was designed for, you really do not see a difference. Yes, you could probably notice now if you go from a game that's 120 hertz and go and play on the TV and play Ocarina of Time or Perfect Dark or whatever, you're like, oh man, the frame rate is slower. How is it responding though? Pixel perfect. You don't get, oh, my input isn't matching. No, because the display is just as slow as your input. So to you, there really is no difference. You play and what you see is what you get. At no point on the original hardware can you take the Nintendo 64 controller, play Super Mario 64, move the analog stick, and have to wait a couple of seconds for there to be a response. It's not going to happen. Or even a fraction of a second at that point. You're not going to know. It's several milliseconds so fast that you're not able to tell the difference, especially since the display has to catch up with what you just did. And the display input is way faster than what you're receiving in video form. So it's just, these are the issues that the layman will never understand. And the people that are not laymen, that are tech, will not understand, because they don't understand the history of the original old technology, or they don't understand, or they're beyond it, and maybe they forgot, maybe they don't care, or they're gaslighting people. So, and I want you guys, anybody that's watching right now, if you have a retro console right now, you can boot up, even like PS1, you can boot it up, play on your CRT TV, and just move around. See if you see any type of weird input lag that you would normally see. Like if you emulate that game now today on a high definition TV, or definitely on a monitor with a high response rate, yeah, you're gonna notice input delay. On that, plug it up to a CRT TV in the original format and see what you get. It's gonna match what you do, because the display is doing what it's supposed to do for the console. And the console was designed around that type of TV. So now that we're in a situation where, hey, we have higher end displays, which are effectively monitors now at this point. They're just monitors with speakers on them now at this point. And we have these high end consoles that do whatever, blah, blah, blah. We want the best response possible because you can do more things, right? You can get good whether your input response is 16 milliseconds or 32. If you're good, you're good. I've been beaten before with people with wireless internet playing Killer Instinct. I mean, it was a really bad experience on my end, but because their Wi-Fi was trash. But if you're good, you're good. and you can play with the hiccups or without the hiccups, or whether it takes a real long time for you guys to load a match or what have you. Or if you're playing Halo, people used to reset their modems all the time if they were the host just to blow the game out. And you just play with those. You play with those glitches, if you will, or those errors by people, and you still have fun with the game. But it has become now that instead of the game itself selling itself, you have features selling the game, which is insane to me because the whole point of you buying the game is because you want to play the game, because it's fun and you want to share it with people or you want to recommend it to people. But if the first part of you selling a game to somebody is talking about the graphics engine, you've already kind of told the tale and just said, hey, you know what? Fun is not the primary focus of this game. You're not buying this game because it's going to be fun. It's going to be entertaining or addicting to play, which is just crazy. Say what you will about, Halo having decent graphics at the time, and it being like a big sweeping epic. They started with just jumping in and out of a warthog and shooting grunts. That's how that game started. And they got that to work. They got that to be fun. And that was the focus of the game. So even they got it back then. The early Bungie team, they understood at a fundamental level. It starts with, hey man, can we shoot good? Does it feel good when you shoot? Does it feel good when you drive this vehicle? Does it feel good when you blow stuff up? And I think that's lost on people, and possibly also the audience is kind of numb because there's only so many Call of Duties you can see. There's only so many set pieces you can see that are scripted to hell and back with explosions and just narrowly getting away from certain death and walking away from explosions and not even getting singed hair. At some point you become desensitized, and then there's always something bigger that you need to wow you in the next game. But if games are made like hamster wheels at this point, globally, with people just plugging away, generating art assets, the project managers, they're designing games the exact same way. They've got the engines are exactly the same. They're using the same engines. They're using the same tropes in games. The combat all looks the same. It's the same over the shoulder camera. If all that stuff looks the same and plays the same, there's kind of no difference anymore. And you need something extra. So with all these same looking games with emphasis on the color gray, you have to tell people that they're cutting edge in graphics, which just means they used a lot of realistic textures from pictures, because the models of the game haven't really increased that much. You're still in the several millions, depending on how detailed the mesh is, and for objects in the environment, 1,000, tens of thousands, as level of detail increases. It's just they're doing the exact same thing from ninth generation is sixth generation, just in the higher resolution with the same problems. And game design is going to continue to stay the same way until we demand more. And to distract us from demanding more, they're like, hey, well, look at the bell and whistle thing that this console said it could do. It's doing it right now, every other frame, sometimes with dynamic resolution. And if you turn all the settings off in performance mode, you can get the frames per second we said you could get to. But you got to sacrifice this one thing over here to do it. And now your console is like a PC. So that's what I want people to understand. I want you to see the forest for the trees and what they're selling you. I feel like this is a how they feed you episode, but that is how they feed you. They want you to stay stuck in the cycle, the console war, the back and forth. Call me a Nintendo fan all you want. Call me an Xbox fan all you want, because I talk about Killer Instinct 24/7. Call me a Sony fan if you dare, since I wear Sony t-shirts sometimes on the podcast. But all these companies are out for your money and your time, right? The question is, what are you willing to pay for what they give you? And is what they give you what you actually want, or is what they give you what they tell you you should want? I think that's the difference. And a lot of the times, what I see on social media is it's crazy. And I know it's not reality, but often in real life, sometimes I talk to people and I'm like, yeah, you're a sheep. You only want to play this game because somebody else was talking about it. Like in real time, it's crazy. And I'm like, hey, so what you like about that game? I saw the video on it and blah, blah, blah. I said, well, who turned you on to it? Well, so-and-so over here. Oh, okay. And y'all gonna all play together? Yeah, we're gonna get on the game. We're gonna. Oh, so it's not even really about you. Have you ever played by yourself? I don't even play the campaign. Oh, okay. So it's not even about the game being fun on its own. It's because you're playing it with other people. So it's a social thing for you. Do you play? Have you ever played any of these games by yourself? Yeah. Is it fun to you? It's all right. Real conversations. And it's kind of telling. It's been this way probably since sixth generation. It's been this way since media's been spinning things, and you have the console wars in real time. Like people will actually say some of this shit out loud, and I'm like are you a living forum board? Like what you're really gonna say? Oh well, why I think the PlayStation is more powerful. Wow. And of course I'll be okay. I'm your Huckleberry. How? Well, you don't know. Ha 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 ha. I'm gonna laugh it off. You don't know what you're talking about. Ha 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 ha. Instead of telling me exactly what the facts and figures are that you derived your conclusion from. It is more powerful because it does these things, and it does these things because of this. And I really don't understand the power argument. It's just what is more capable, what is able to do more, I guess, or it can do these many things because it has this fill rate. So therefore, that's more convenient for developers that prefer fill rate, because all these numbers don't really mean anything unless there's a game to take advantage of it. Why do you care if one console can crunch more polygons than the other if your favorite game is vertical shooters with sprites? Why do you care if your console supports 4K and ray tracing and you don't have a 4K TV in your house? You don't know what ray tracing is, and somebody just told you it looks good. Look at that shiny floor over there. Also, that's the only floor that has ray tracing on it. It's just weird. It's just weird. So, Nova Regen, Metal Man. Okay, I see some of y'all coming in. Appreciate y'all stopping by. It's just me kind of venting because I see some of this stuff and it's just bothering me. There's another article here. GameSpot threw together talking about the Nintendo Switch 2 needs to be powerful or whatever kind of foolishness. I'm trying to see what the title was so I can give you the right. I don't want to misquote them here. Quote, the Nintendo Switch 2 needs to be as powerful as its competitors. Spot on, I guess, is their little talk. And they did a video on it. I would play the video and go through it. This podcast has been long enough, so I don't want to extend it. Triple M, nothing much, man. You haven't really missed anything. It's more me kind of being on my soapbox here, talking about why we're here and why a lot of the industry is set up the way that it is. So Digital Foundry has a very close relationship with Eurogamer. Eurogamer is a online publication. I think at one point they were a paper publication. And their goal is to sell ads while talking about games and covering games and having exclusive stories and reviews, right? Just like IGN and GameSpot and any of these other articles, but that's sort of where we were. But they put out this article talking about what the Switch 2 needs to do. They don't really give any reasons, right? They just said it just needs to be as strong as its competitors. I mean, I guess that would be PS5 and Series X, right? Even though PS5 and Series X can't do what Switch does. So you don't want them to be on the same level of what Nintendo does, but you want Nintendo to mimic what they do. And for what reason exactly? So, and I don't like the way that they massage or they manufacture consent either. It's no secret that when compared to Sony's PlayStation 5 and Microsoft's Xbox Series X and S, the Nintendo Switch severely lacks the same power and graphical fidelity. What the fuck do you mean by power? They'll probably say something like, well, the teraflops. For what? What do you want to use them for? Well. What is fidelity? What do you mean by fidelity? Well, a level of so you're saying that high quality visuals can't happen at 720p, 1080p? Who determines what this is? Like, what is the math on this? That's kind of what bothers me. What I don't like is what I talked about earlier at the beginning was why the Switch is such a popular system. It isn't because it's mobile and it's powerful, right? So they put here in the article here, and with competitors like Valve Steam Deck and the Asus ROG Ally, and I think another system just got announced not too long ago, and it's actually got the detachable Joy-Cons. I think it's Lenovo or something came up with this one. So they're like, by entering the marketplace, these limitations are growing more apparent. Why would it grow more apparent if those two competitors don't play Nintendo games? They act like Valve is just going to start publishing Nintendo games. Asus is just, they don't sell games at all. At least Valve publishes games. At least they develop games. They have a game store. So at least they're a publisher, right? Asus, they're a third-party manufacturer. They manufacture parts that have already been created by the original manufacturer, right? They don't even make their own stuff. Motherboards, yeah, but even then, they're spec'd after what Intel and AMD build. They don't build their own. So they go by whatever the form factor that those companies come up with, and they tell you, hey, this is how many pins is going to be in our new CPU. This is how many lanes of PCIe we're going to have for our GPU. Go forth and build your own, because we're going to make our reference board over here. That's what Asus does. So for them to build their own thing, why would you even consider them a competitor in the marketplace? I guess you could, because they do want to take your time, and that's kind of how Nintendo budgets competition to them, because they not only compete with Sony and Microsoft, they compete with Netflix, they compete with iOS, they compete with TikTok. They want your time. They want you to play more and more games, because they have your time, then you're going to buy more games. You're going to be how can I say this? You're going to be more accustomed to seeing their games. You're going to be introduced to more of their games as you play more and more of them. If you're on the Switch, you're going to see an ad for a game when you turn it on, and you're like, oh, what's that? And then you go to the eShop, and there you go. We have you now. So that's all they really care about, really, at this point. And that's what their competition is in their mind. Not just, oh, well, Sony and Microsoft, whatever will they do if they come out with even better specs than us? Like, Nintendo doesn't care about that at all. They know at the end of the day, the games are going to do it. So it's just interesting. So I was looking at some of these comments. I look at some of these comments here. It's close to an hour, and I guess we can wrap it up pretty soon. But I got a comment from Twitch. Strikerberg, he said, "You think games skipping Nintendo systems will continue in Generation 10?" I know it will. It's going to happen, and it's not a tech thing. It's a business thing. And I've always said this, and I've only gotten proven right about it as situations went along even further. Everybody saw what happened with this entire lawsuit situation with Microsoft and whatnot, and all it did was reveal everybody's business. Sony out here literally pay gating games, keeping certain games away from people. Capcom's entire legal contract was revealed with Sony. Avoiding platforms, not publishing games. You have to publish games day and date on Sony first. Like, it could never be a situation where Capcom publishes a game on another platform other than Sony based on that contract. And then you have you have the CEO of Activision outright admitting that they kind of gambled against Switch. They thought the system wasn't going to do well, and even after the system did well, they thought Call of Duty wouldn't sell well on it. So that's why they didn't even. It had nothing to do with technology. It had nothing to do with with the engine and blah 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 blah. This is the same company that ported all of Call of Duty Modern Warfare to Wii in 480p. The entire game. A system that didn't even have modern custom shaders, right? The way you built shaders in Wii was you used the TEV engine. And that's how you created shaders in that game, on that platform. So you had to be pretty smart or already knowledgeable about the system to be able to. You couldn't just take shaders and drop them on that system. It wouldn't work that way. So it was never a situation where whether, hey, can this game run on Switch? It was like, we're not even going to start because we don't think it's going to sell, and we don't think our game will sell on there once the system was selling. They didn't even think about it. So that's a business decision. And I really hope more and more people start to recognize this. It's always a console war situation of, well, this game can't run and that's why it's not there. I'm like, how could you? That's one of those things where you argue from a negative perspective. You can't argue a negative. It's not here. And the reason why it's not here, motherfucker, it's got to be there for you to know that there's a reason it's there. If it's not there, you can't just assume what the reason why it's absent. There could be a multitude of reasons. But you know how people just, Occam's razor isn't always right. A lot of times Occam's razor is wrong, especially when you're proving the negative. So that's just one of those situations where it's just really, really strange, some of the logic some of these people have. But no, they're really over here trying to say that it's going to be an issue with Steam Deck and these other copycat platforms that, you know, I think Steam Deck is probably the most successful of them, but I think even Valve knew they weren't there to compete with Nintendo, because if they were going to get embarrassed. So their whole goal is, hey, make PC platforming better. Hopefully, in my opinion, I hope it to further along Linux gaming more so than Windows. If the closer you can get to the metal, the better. And Windows is a weird type of OS. So with a lot of different issues that I'll get into in a later podcast. But that was just kind of the focus of that and how gaming is going from now. So you see how gaming media massages it too. They really want you to stay in the fight. They want you to constantly be like, hey, well, I need this system because of this, or this system is better than that system, and this game is better than this game. They really want you to go back and forth about it because they want to create more stuff or more arguments for you to tune into. Because if I got you arguing about this, then I can create an article that supports your side, an article that supports your side, and both of y'all dumbass motherfuckers gonna click on our shit, and you're gonna look at our ads, and we're gonna get paid. that's kind of the way that you need to see it. And I hope more people understand this and spread this message. And it's not to say, hey, you just need to boycott those platforms. I do for a host of other reasons, but it's just to know where you are. Know what you are to them. You are a number to be sold. You are a way for them to get advertising dollars. So that's the gist of it. They really don't like that you don't go into brick and mortar stores anymore because they had deals with those as well. Ironclad deals, that was part of the marketing as well. Where they get in bed with stores and they just say, hey, while you're here, I know we pay you to put games on the wall, but could you just make our wall look bigger? You know, I know you only have like 60 of our games, but could you like put 120 boxes up, even if it's just copies of the 60 games? That way it can stretch all the way over there. And then whoever our competition is, they could just look really small in the corner. If anybody is familiar with GameStop, Software Center, Babbage's, all those other stores back then in the day, it was a constant battle for shelf space for that reason. That was part of the game as well. Because as you go in and eyeballs, you gravitate towards the thing that looks like it has the most selection. So they're kind of mad that went away. Because now now with Nintendo Directs and stuff like that, Nintendo can market directly to the customer and then go straight to Amazon and go straight to Nintendo.com and order it on eShop, or order a physical copy from Best Buy, like I said, or Amazon or whatever. And they bypass the machine that told you avoid that system in its games. So they're kind of upset about that. Especially if they don't have their games, those third parties don't have their games on that system. And they're like, ooh, but if you buy the Nintendo stuff, we won't buy our stuff. So what we want you to do is stay in this little thing here, because if you keep on in a console war over here, you're going to stay on the console war sites that only show you the games that we want you to see. So that's kind of how it's evolved during the digital age. But yeah, that's pretty much the gist of it. I just want people to understand that. So I'll finish going through the comments here for a little bit, and we'll go from there. Appreciate y'all coming through, by the way. I really do. It's just really just interesting. What Gwen talking about Kingdom Hearts game being 130. Yeah. Some of these games are pretty big. Even back in 2006, it was bad. And it's crazy because they didn't start off that way. Like Cameo and some of those other games on 360, they weren't that big at first. They just started getting bigger and bigger for no reason. Let's see what else. I could see Nintendo doing a hybrid storage model where they split the SSD in two. One drive on a dock solely to store for 4K texture to keep file sizes of the games on the Switch itself small. That could be a certain type of thing. I wouldn't put that past them for sure. That could definitely be a thing. Cool Breeze said Alien Isolation on Switch proves that optimization is key. Very impressive what Switch actually holds its own against the other console version. Yeah, it's all about optimization, man. And if you notice too, what is the difference between all these really big, massive games that are technically superior and all this other kind of stuff? They've been 6, 7, 8 year projects. And then that game comes out and you port it to another system. It's like, that system was obviously very, very capable. Look how it's struggling on this other platform. I'm like, it took them 6 months to port that. They didn't get all the support that the original game got. They didn't get custom art assets for their platform and their resolution. They didn't get custom detailed game engines talking directly to the things that console does well. So how do you know? And that's the thing. So what synthetic benchmarks don't exist, especially when you're talking about game consoles. They don't exist. And when they used to exist, the old GCC compilers and whatnot, those tests, they still weren't exactly indicative of what one system could do better than the other, and game consoles no longer really rely on CPU grunt anymore anyway. It's more GPU. That ended with Wii U, contrary to popular belief, because developers then at the time acted like they didn't know what the Wii U CPU was, and they kept trying to run a lot of SIMD stuff on it and saying that the console was weak. And I'm like, in just a year, you're going to have to do this same thing on PS3 and Xbox One, right? Because they're more GPU heavy and CPU is lacking. And sure enough, they ended up magically doing it. Go figure. But on Wii U, they're like, nah, I'm not going to do it. So, yep, Switch Pro is BS. Yep, for sure. What's this one? It says my favorite was that the dev kit was recalled with no proof. Yep, exactly that. Like I'm like there would be a HAT something for whatever the Switch Pro would have been, right? Clearly there would have been evidence of it. There would have been something in the wild with a model number that somebody would have got. Like the reason that we know what the HAT models are is because developers out in the wild, like this is not a secret. Like, and Nintendo doesn't care what the model number is. They're not going to hide that. They'll hide all the other information with regarding the SDK. But development kits, yes, they will be in the wild. So yeah, if one never showed up, then yeah, I don't know what else to tell you. And yeah, same thing. Saying the council yields R&D. Yeah, it's just crazy stuff, man. What is this one? Doom and Gloom on game prep. Yeah, so the game preservation situation is still interesting to me because the biggest problem with game preservation is licensing. Nintendo has issues with licensing? Not for their own games, they don't. So why would they be the biggest problem? What most of these people talk about. I'm like, can Friday the 13th for NES be published today on another platform? And if it can, how many hoops do you have to go through to make that happen? Michael Jackson's Moonwalker. How many hoops do you have to go through to make that happen? To make it show up on wherever today, on Steam Deck, right? Steam Deck certified, right? Or Steam Deck exclusive. They built a custom version just for Steam Deck. How many hoops you got to go through to make that happen? How many legal teams do you have to talk to make that happen? That's where your biggest problem is with regards to game preservation. It's lawyers. It's lawyers for properties from long ago, and they switch hands 3-4 times and who owns it or whatnot. And that's the biggest problem. Anytime I bring that up, nobody wants to. They're like, well, I just want to blame Nintendo, so I don't care about that part. Like, what? But if you care about game preservation, you care about game preservation. I think what the big thing is most people, they think and look to the NES and all the games that on the NES that Nintendo hasn't gone out of their way to make happen, even though the majority of those games are third party. Which is why, like, a lot of the times when people say, oh, well, when Nintendo's bad, blah, 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 I'm like, what Nintendo game are you missing that you don't have access to? And usually I'll get a dumb answer like, oh, well, Twilight Princess. I'm like, that game came out for 3 platforms. Like, what are you talking about? Oh, what if you don't have access? I mean, what if I don't have access to the Switch? It's just bewildering to me. What the levels that people will stoop to, moving goalposts. It's just crazy. They already started from Nintendo is bad at game preservation. I gotta find every reason why, even though the biggest offenders are lawyers for third-party games from way back when. So if Pierce Brosnan never be seen in a video game again, he can talk to lawyers and he would never be seen in a video game again. Any other video game that comes out, it's not happening. Specifically because halt. I've talked to MGM and they will never license my image again. At that point, it's not Nintendo's fault. It's not Microsoft's fault. So you can never get a GoldenEye again for that reason. What do you do? So it's just interesting. One of these days, you're gonna tell me how to pronounce your name. Someone needs to hold Digital Foundry and these other tech outlets some accountability in what comes out of their mouth because the lies are still piling up. The 59.94 frames per second was just that whole situation was just odd to me. And then and it's crazy when you call it out. I'm a fanboy, right? I'm a Nintendo fanboy, right? But I'm calling out them just literally bragging about tech features in a game that's a Nintendo game. This is a Wii U exclusive then at the time. And John's just like, yeah, this is happening and this is happening and this is happening. I'm like, where? Who told you this? Who told you this? Yeah, the frame rate and the pixel count, yes, y'all can do that. Y'all can show that. Y'all can validate that. But nobody told you that any type of temporal upscaling is happening, and it's happening based on the Z-axis. You need developer information to come up with that. And that's the strange thing to me. And like, you calling that out in real time, you're like, oh, you're a fanboy, blah, blah, blah. No, he's talking about a Nintendo game. And I'm like, that's kind of questionable what he's saying right now. But okay. You don't know that based on what? Just by looking. That's not something that you can know. Say they're worse than Kotaku. Yeah, I don't know. Kotaku was real toxic at some point. Gwen was talking about ARMS. Yes, that's a lovely game. Angel Page, welcome to the chat. Yeah, it's been a while. Glad you're here. Triple M in the chat. What's going on? Next gen. Yep. Yeah, next gen. They call it next gen all the way until there's another gen. Go figure. All right. Game idea guy, what you talking about? So I keep saying that everyone is just regurgitating what they hear, and they're not researching anything. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's exactly what it is. And what they don't want to do is they don't want to tell you that. So I was in discussion with somebody today on Twitter, and they're talking about the whole input lag thing. And they wouldn't respond with their own words. They would just link a video or embed a video in a tweet. And I'm directly in real time responding to them like, that's not talking about what I'm saying. And also, they're not accounting for this and this and this. And also, this video is only talking about emulation in PC games. Oh, well, this emulation is doing this and doing this. And I'm like, but you're not addressing what I'm talking about. So since we're talking about emulation, what do you know about emulation? How is this? And of course, there was no answer after that. I got crickets after that. So a lot of people just link bomb because they don't have anything else valid to say. So it's just really weird to me that it's just weird that you would see some of those people in real life, that you'll go to a convention or something, or be standing in line for a game or something, and you'll actually hear somebody blurt that out. Sometimes it's just, and I know people get comfortable when they're in their friend groups or whatnot. You know, you're standing in line and you think it's okay, but like other people will eventually call you out on that shit. Like you can't just say shit. Exclusive gets you into the ecosystem. It's up to third party to figure out how they can maximize platform. Yes, exactly. Say what you want about Carnival Games, man. They knew exactly what they were doing. They're like, hey, we're on the party system. Let's sell our game. We're going to do the same thing Nintendo did. We're just going to have our brand and we're going to be cheap. And that's exactly what they did. So how do you have something that low budget development wise do better than all the other major third party games on the system? That's a self-report. That's a self-report right there. And it has nothing to do with Nintendo at that point. Like at some point, these guys got to look in the mirror, and they don't want to. And that's why they have these quote unquote interviews, and they have the gaming media to do their behest. They know They know where they're at. They know exactly where they're at. All right, y'all can add more questions in chat real quick. I'm gonna cap it off probably in the next 10 minutes, but I'll answer as many questions as I can get to here. Dark Void, what do you think is going to be the launch games of the next Switch if I had to make a prediction? I still stand on this. It's gonna be a 3D Mario. 3D Mario, and I'm gonna say without a doubt Metroid Prime 4 and probably Splatoon 4 as well. I think Nintendo is really going to double down on what made Switch good, and they're gonna keep it roll. They're gonna keep the gravy train rolling. So Switch 2 will have some type of RPG, whether it's from Monolith Soft or not. They're gonna have their Splatoon shooter. They're gonna have a Mario, 3D Mario, and they're gonna have Metroid. I don't think Zelda's ready. That's going to be in the oven for a while. So Zelda might not be a launch game. That might be the time where Nintendo goes back to the drawing board and Zelda ends up being a swan song for the next Switch and also a launch title for what's after the next Switch. So that might be how it goes. It'd be cool to kind of quote me now and see how that pans out. But it took 5 years for me to be proven right about the whole ecosystem thing. With Switch. So I thought I was wrong for a real long time until Switch Lite came out. And I was like, oh, that's it. That's the thing. That's the thing I said might come. Here's another one from the Game Master 21. Appreciate you coming through. What do I think Nintendo will do for the next-gen console as far as innovation? Maybe VR, AR, something new. Okay, whatever they're working on is very different. Microsoft and Sony know, so they're trying to hedge their bets on what they can do first. I've got a hunch. I'm not exactly certain, but I think it will be some type of AR device. Whether the system will actually launch with it or it'll just be built to take advantage of it, I think that's going to come. I also think that the control interface will be refined significantly better than what we currently have now with the Joy-Con. I don't think there will be additional buttons, but I do think there will be some type of feature within the thumbsticks and whatnot where there'll be analog presses and analog triggers. So that kind of stuff I think is coming. That's just me. Other than that, it'll be the Switch feature also maybe changed a little bit. I think the supplemental computing device will be a thing, one way or the other. Whether it's just to notify that the system needs to overclock, it'll be a chip in there to tell it, hey, you need to overclock, and also I'm going to be your tensor core for you. So whenever we go into that mode where we need to upscale, I'll be the tensor core to upscale for you. And it should only do that in dock mode because the tensor core is there. If they split it up that way, you don't accidentally do that shit while you're undocked and then kill your battery or kill the fan or what have you. So I think that probably would be the way, kind of like an off one button is there or it's not kind of situation to keep the Switch temperatures down. So I think that may be part of it as well. I won't spoil the whole. I got my own kind of theories here. I keep one of them close to the vest, but I do think there will be some attempt of VR AR going forward. I don't know if it's going to be a separate product or not, but it would definitely be part of their ecosystem going forward. They're going to try it again. Let's see. Says Capcom been making deals with Sony and screw Nintendo fans. That's so. Then that's low. No wonder they're 120. Yeah. So look, Street Fighter 4 came to the 3DS. Just the 3DS. So we know that it's home console specific. And it came just to the 3DS. At some point in time, Capcom was like, hey, the Wii's selling a lot. Maybe we should put a Street Fighter on it. Or make it a launch game for the Wii U at the time when they didn't know how that was going to be. But it was an HD console. So you know that there had been talks about that at some point. But if the lawyers say no, then it's not happening. Um, consensus view. What were we saying, Angel? Consensus view is Switch is a portable. Switch portable is equivalent to a Wii U performance. Every Switch game has a portable profile. Therefore, perhaps Wii U wasn't so underpowered after all. Industry policy. Yeah, yeah. Wii U was woefully underrated, and it was underestimated a lot. Um, for what it could do, nobody took advantage of it for the most part. Xenoblade Chronicles X is just a taste of what could have been possible with that system. You said, "Are y'all saying these people manufacture stories?" Yeah, of course they are, and they're doing them for a reason. So, all right, Triple M, we'll see what you got here. Did not see this discussing on Winging It. So here, what do you think about the news of Nintendo going patent crazy, a Tears of the Kingdom game mechanic that people were worried about? I think they saw what happened with Breath of the Wild. So they're like, what we're not going to do is spend all this time and effort developing systems in Havoc that nobody else had the idea of doing because they're just making games like a factory, and we're over here making something different. And then as soon as we do it, they add it to their factory. Assassin's Creed. So they didn't want to see Ultra Hand in an Assassin's Creed game, essentially. So, I mean, you kind of if that's their intellectual property, if that's what they decided to invent and they came up with, and they choose to patent it, sure. I don't think it will stifle game creativity because you can figure out ways to develop that with different strings of code, or different ways to handle that same scenario to be able to create solutions with 3D physics and whatnot. These systems are so powerful, so to speak, you could just write another 3D engine and it should be able to handle it, right? So don't worry about what Nintendo did, because what Nintendo did was for them. So y'all should be able to come up with a different way of doing it, since those systems are so powerful, and you know the Unreal Engine is endless and all this other kind of shit, right? So it shouldn't be an issue. I don't see what the complaint is here. Why do you care? Why do you care what Nintendo keeps close to the vest? Their systems are weak anyway, right? Their games aren't good, right? So why do you care? That's kind of where we're at here. All right, so getting close to the end here. All right. Let's see what this question is. So anybody else offering tidings to the video game gods that Nintendo brings back a version of Miiverse to 10th gen? I don't know. But I definitely want it back. It would be cool to have it back, but I don't think that's going to happen. The Nintendo said everybody was on social media, so they saw no need in it. That's literally what Nintendo was quoted as saying. They stopped Miiverse because people were on social media, and there were better avenues of getting done what they got done with Miiverse to them. Personally, I mean, there's a lot of people that were fans of it and they enjoyed the peace of that form of social media. So they would love to be there. But if they had the numbers, they had the use case, and maybe it just wasn't as many people on even with the 13 million on Wii U, there weren't as many people tracking on Miiverse as they thought they would have there out of the 13 million versus people jumping on social media. So, I mean, if you launch a platform and you know you sell 13 million and you look and you see there's only like 3 million people a day using your platform, but then you go and you look at hashtag Nintendo and you're looking anywhere between thousands of tweets every hour. Yeah, I can kind of see their logic at that point. They go in there like, hey, you know, we're clocking millions of tweets a day over here, and we can barely get 1 million people on our console that's in everybody's home. What's the disconnect here? Maybe we're doing something wrong. And that's where, you know, I said all the time, you speak with your wallet, and Nintendo will answer based on how you spend with your wallet. And that's why virtual console's gone. A lot of that stuff's gone. A lot of people was lying. A lot of people were capping on what they wanted and what they said they wanted, blah, 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 blah. Like, y'all didn't buy this system until it was already gone. Then you tried to go buy them and wonder why they're $300 and $400 on eBay now because you're trying to complete your collection. Y'all didn't buy games. When you were on Miiverse, you were just on for a second. You weren't really buying games on eShop and stuff like that. So Nintendo was like, all right, cool. We'll keep eShop around only because 3DS was doing good, but everything else, what's the point of keeping these servers up? Only a couple of thousand people a day using the TV app. All right, cool. We'll cut it. No point in spending the money on it. So I just want y'all to understand they are a corporation at the end of the day, and if they feel like they're wasting their time and their money, they'll get it. They'll get all that shit. So I will say whatever Nintendo does and you like it, use the hell out of it because there's no telling. There's no telling when it could go bye-bye. So, all right, this is going to be my last question. J2 Blue in the Sky. Do I think that Nintendo will start using Unreal Engine 4 for the next gen Switch for most of their games? I'm going to say no to that. And the only reason why I'm going to say no to that is Monolith Soft and their own internal engine that they've developed for. Basically, they've modified the Xenoblade engine to fit both Splatoon, Mario Odyssey, Zelda, pretty much anything with open world on it. They've mastered that technique. So they started experimenting a little bit with some outsourced games. The partners of Nintendo in Japan are messing with Unreal Engine 4 and whatnot. I don't think internally they'll be dealing with too much of it. You have to think of it this way: Nintendo develops entire consoles with how they develop games in mind, right? If they say, hey, look, you know what? The majority of our games are going to be Unreal Engine 5 or whatever, right? Now you have to build your entire console about running well in Unreal Engine 5. And now you've effectively embedded Epic as a core creator in how your console works. What if Epic goes under tomorrow and your entire console was built around that? Now where's your support for developers? What happens at that point? So those are some of the things that Nintendo was probably thinking about when EA was like, hey, we'll be your online. And Nintendo's like, weren't you just filing for bankruptcy like less than a decade ago? Like, yeah, how could we say, yeah, you're going to be our internet provider, and the internet provider, all y'all do is turn around and lease what you have, your CDN, to Akamai and everybody else, Amazon and what have you. We'll just go with them. We don't need you. So that's kind of the situation there. So you don't want to be too dependent on a third party engine if you're a first party game publisher. You don't want to do that because the majority of your work isn't making consoles or selling consoles. It's selling games. And if the core of your entire game design philosophy is based off of somebody else's engine, that spells trouble if anything should happen. I know it doesn't look like Epic is going to go anywhere, but it could. You never know. So, well, that's it. I'm gonna go ahead and wrap it up. I appreciate you guys being active with the comments and whatnot. I'll try to keep these a little bit more frequent. Thanks to everybody in the chat. Thanks for Wigging It Crew stopping by in the chat as well. And I'm gonna go ahead and call this one a day. But we'll learn about Switch 2 and how everything works, just like the title says, all in due time. See you guys later. I'm out.